So session 2 of the Miracles of Jesus. And yesterday with the introduction, we were saying how the majority of miracles were healings. Well, today I'm going to look at 2 healings. The first one comes very early in Mark's account of the Gospel, where Jesus met a man with leprosy. And the man begged Jesus, he said, "If you are willing, make me clean." And says Jesus was indignant. Now, what was the indignation? Well, if a person had leprosy, they were excluded from society. They were called unclean. They weren't able to be with their families or even in society. So they were completely excluded, shunned. I believe that's what Jesus' indignation was, that this man was shunned from society, that who he was as a human being was judged by his looks or his disease. And so Jesus reached out and he touched him. And that was a way of saying, you belong. You're not shunned or excluded. And he's healed instantly. And he then said to him, now go and show yourself to the priests. And that was what the law said, that if a person was healed of leprosy, the priests had to verify that healing. And so he told him to go back and have that healing verified. And that way he was able to be accepted back into society. And that's what's most important. Jesus looks beyond the actual disease to see what the person most needs. He was outraged that the rejection of this man had suffered, and he wanted to restore him, because that is the very nature of God. The second healing comes in Luke chapter 17, and Jesus was in a sort of a border area. He came across a group of 10 men who had leprosy. Now, they were sent away from their homes, and so often you would find lepers would band together just to support one another. They had to keep their distance from Jesus, so it says they shouted out in a loud voice, "Jesus, have pity on us." This time he didn't touch them, he just told them, "Go and show yourself to the priests." Their healing happened as they turned and went. And one of them suddenly realised, he must have looked down at his skin and thought, whoa, it's gone. And so he came racing back to Jesus and he threw himself at his feet and he was praising God in a loud voice. Again, Jesus saw their need to be restored to society, and so he healed them all. But only one of them realised the enormity of what had just happened for him. And he was overcome with thankfulness and praise for God. This raises for me the question of how we might take for granted what God does for us. Because there are times when we receive an answer to prayer, and it may be a healing, but it may be just restoration from a particular issue. Most of us will probably give thanks at the time, but it's very easy to just return back to the way things were before. We see the healing, or we see the resolution, as a means to enable us to just go back to what we were doing. But when God heals, he heals for a purpose. That is to enable us to live productive lives. A healing is not restoring us to enable us to go back, but to enable us to go forward. You can hear a sadness in Jesus' remark to this one man who returned, and he said, "Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this one foreigner?" May we never take for granted what God does for us.
The life, the world, and history beneath spoke timing to me, 'cause planets we spin, but galaxies wide through infinite space. We sing of his splendor and majesty. The light, the world now shone as a man, and walked through He felt our injustice and shame. Come, come, daughters and sons, look through the light of the world. Sing, sing, praise to Him. Simply believe you will receive mercy and love without end. The light of the world brings justice for all, defying the proud and defending the poor. Then humbled Himself to death on the cross, He crushed the oppressor and rescued the lost. Come, come, daughters and sons, look to the light of the world. Sing, sing, praise to Him. Simply believe you will receive mercy and love without end. The light of the world still shines on the earth with gifts of forgiveness, the hope of liberty.